Diving into Star Wars for the first time can be intimidating. For first-time viewers, there's the question of which film to start with, not to mention subsequent questions about which shows and movies to watch and in what order. The same is just as true, if not even more so, for the books. Since the launch of the High Republic, the Star Wars publishing world has been filled with amazing stories of both hopeful and tragic heroism, featuring original characters in a brand new era. So whether you're a longtime fan or diving into the High Republic for the first time, we're here to make that journey as smooth as possible. Without further ado, let's jump into the wonderful world of the High Republic. Hi everyone, I'm Nathan Emery, content creator here at Youtini, and I'll be your guide as you prepare to jump into the High Republic era. But before we get into the books and comics, let's answer a few quick questions to make sure we're all on the same page. So, what is the High Republic? The High Republic is a publishing initiative of books, comics, and other projects around an era of the Star Wars universe that takes place roughly 200 years before The Phantom Menace. What's super cool about this period is that each new piece of media is created in coordination with the rest of the initiative, which means it's all really cohesive. When does this era take place? The first books in this initiative take place around 232 BBY, and the second phase is set to take place around 382 BBY. But back up a second, what are phases? The High Republic is split up into 3 phases: Light of the Jedi, Quest of the Jedi, and Trials of the Jedi. Each phase is made up of 3 waves, which each contain 3 books: an adult novel, a young adult novel, and a middle grade novel. Who comes up with all of these stories? The 5 main creators of the High Republic are Claudia Gray, Justina Ireland, Daniel Jose Older, Charles Soule, and Cavan Scott, the story architects of the era. Okay. Now that we're all on the same page, let's jump into where to start with the High Republic, starting at the beginning of Phase 1. Wave 1 of Phase 1 is all about the Great Disaster, which is the sudden explosion of the Legacy-run transport ship during hyperspace travel. This sets the stage for this phase as the Jedi race to aid victims while the Nihil begin their assault on the galaxy. To get the introduction to this phase, you'll want to start with the adult novel Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, which tells the story of the Great Disaster and the Jedi response. It's a fantastic introduction to the High Republic. From there, the middle grade novel A Test of Courage by Justina Ireland tells the story of Vernestra Rwoh, the youngest Padawan to become a Jedi Knight on her first real assignment. This ties into the overarching plot of this phase. Finally, check out the young adult novel Into the Dark by Claudia Gray. This book features Jedi Padawan Reath Silas, who begrudgingly leaves his home of Coruscant to the frontier, where he and his companions discover a threat to the galaxy at large. On the comic side, you'll want to check out The High Republic Volume 1 by Cavan Scott and Ario Anandito, and The High Republic Adventures Volume 1 by Daniel Jose Older and Harvey Tolibao, both of which compile comics that tie into the books while telling fantastic stories in their own right. That's all for Phase 1. Technically, you only need to read the adult novel for each phase before jumping into the next, but you'll want to read the young adult novels sequentially, and we do really recommend all of this material as it's all fantastic and gives so much depth to each phase. So with that said, let's jump into Phase 2. The major plot point for Phase 2 is the Republic Fair, which is intended to celebrate a time of peace and prosperity for the galaxy, but quickly turns chaotic with the arrival of the Nihil. The adult novel from this phase is The Rising Storm by Cavan Scott. As with Light of the Jedi, this is the book that features the main event from this phase, along with the Jedi response. And just like with the prior phase, the middle grade novel ties directly into that story. In this case, it's Race to Crash Point Tower by Daniel Jose Older. This book features a fantastic character Jedi Padawan Ram Jamorim, along with some familiar faces from the prior middle grade novel and High Republic Adventures comics. Rounding out Phase 2 is Out of the Shadows by Justina Ireland, which prominently features Vernestra, who was introduced in Ireland's first High Republic entry, A Test of Courage, along with Sylvestre Yarrow, who is attempting to keep her family's cargo business afloat. The book also features other familiar faces, including Reath Silas, as the ragtag group is asked to assist with a property dispute on the frontier. For the comics in Phase 2, check out The High Republic Volume 2 by Kevin Scott, George Ginty, and Ario Anandito, and The High Republic Adventures Volume 2 by Daniel Jose Older and Harvey Tolabau, The Monster of Temple Peak by Kevin Scott and Rachel Stott, and then the manga The Edge of Balance Volume 1 by Shima Shinya, Justina Ireland, and Mizuki Sakakibara. Finally, you'll want to check out the audio drama Tempest Runner by Kevin Scott, which gives an in-depth look at Nihil Tempest Runner Lorna D after she falls into Jedi captivity. We definitely recommend listening to the audio version as it just adds so much, but you can also pick up a physical script copy of this story. To round out the first wave of the High Republic, we're going to dive into Phase 3. The major event of the final phase in this wave of the High Republic is the fall of Starlight Beacon, the Republic's symbol of hope and unity. The space station is the target of the Nihil's biggest plot yet, and the story is told in the adult novel from this wave, The Fallen Star by Claudia Gray. Now, knowing the major plot point of this book only adds to the tension and heartbreak as we anticipate what is to become of our beloved Jedi as the Nihil attempt to snuff out their light. Tying into The Fallen Star is the middle grade novel Mission to Disaster by Justina Ireland. The book features Vernestra and Padawan Imri responding to reports of a Nihil attack on Port Haleb, where they begin to uncover threads weaving a bigger plot. Finally, rounding out Phase 3 in books is the young adult novel Midnight Horizon by Daniel Jose Older. This takes place concurrently with some events in The Fallen Star, but you'll definitely want to read Midnight Horizon second out of those two books. So in this book, Jedi Masters Comac Vitus and Cantum Sai, along with Padawans Reeth Silas and Ram Jamorim, investigate a suspected Nihil plot on Corellia and uncover a much more dangerous plan. On the comic side, check out Trail of Shadows by Daniel Jose Older and David Wachter, and Eye of the Storm by Charles Soule and Guillermo Sana. That concludes Phase 1 of the High Republic. Not much is known about Phase 2 except that it'll launch us back 150 years before the events of Phase 1. The phase kicks off on October 4th, 2022, so be sure to head on over to youtini.com or keep an eye on this channel to keep up with all of the latest updates and prepare for this second phase. We'll also link this guide in written form in the description below so you can check back and follow along as you read. Thanks for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.